Welcome to the webinar on Are You Ready for Report Cards with MMS Generations. I'm Beth Elliott, your trainer today, and we're going to be going over how to import and verify your grades, all the different steps for setting up your report cards and the setup of that. So it's the grades, the GPA, the rank, the credits, the honor roll, attendance, all of those good things that you want on your report cards. So we're going to start today with the area of how do you get your grades in? Now, for those that are entering grades through the web portal, the MMS web portal, the grades will already be there. And you can come into the little student grade editor button and be actually able to see what grades have been entered at this point. And you can even limit it so that you're looking at just the current marking period. So if I go under grades, I can say, oh, show me quarter 2. And if I display only quarter 2, I can see just those grades and any canned comments that the teachers have put in, along with any note that they might have put in. And I can tell that for this geometry course, there actually is a note because the note button itself is in red. So I can click on that and see how she's doing. This note does not show on the subject grade report card. It only shows on your standards report card or in the teacher comments area of the web portal, but it will not go on the report card. The canned comments, on the other hand, will show, and they will show usually as the text rather than the number. So I could come in here and actually make a grade change if I needed to, just by going to the locate and finding another student that I need to put in. So if I click on Charles, and if Charles is missing a grade, I can actually click in here and put in that grade if I so need. Another way to enter the grades is, I'm going to close out of here for a moment, is if I go under grades, operations, and I can enter grades by class. So this is another way where I can enter the grades. And what I do here is indicate which grade I want to see and or the comments. I can do my course setup for courses that meet during the current marking periods. I can order it by the course sections. I can order it by teacher. I can do it any of those ways that I want. When I build the list, it's going to give me all of the courses that meet during the terms, the grade plans that I specified. And when I go to do my grade entry, I can then pick a course. It's going to give me the students and their IDs and gives me an area where I can put in the grade and or the comment. And then if I tab, I can go to next student. It'll just bring me down to the next student so I can continue to enter information. So this is a nice quick way to be able to do that. So it just gives you that option. You can, under grades, more grade edits, print a valid grades list. Excuse me, I got to go to reports and print the verification. In here, you can specify which grades you want to see. So if I'm coming up to the end of semester 2, I might want my quarter 2 classes again, my semester 1, my year, and with or without the AP. Put this in teacher name order and build the list as I did when I was doing the grade entry. My layout is I can do it in either portrait or landscape, 1 or 2 lines depending on how much I'm showing. I can even put a blank line between students if I want to give them a little bit of extra space. You can see how much of the area of ID, year of grad, gender, and homeroom you want to see. You can bring 2 additional biographical fields. If I come over to the additional setup, I can come in and say, oh, show me quarter 2 grade, couple of comments, my mid-year exam, mid-year average, and I might even need my final exam and or final grade because if it's a semester or quarter class, those will be needed. If it was a year-long class, I might be looking at the mid-years, and this just makes it easy that I can print them all at once. If I go to my report layout, I've already gone over the number of characters that I'm allowed by doing it as a portrait. If I go landscape, I still have room. The default is I will skip classes with no 0 enrolled, so I'm not printing a blank sheet. I can include withdrawn students or transfer courses. Usually I don't need to do transfer courses, but it's there if I'd like. And I can put the text in if there's a blank grade. Now the default is a pair of brackets with a couple of spaces between. So if I go ahead and print, this is going to give me an area where I can look at it. And I could have put a report title that says when I want that verified. So let me go back and do that. So I'm going to just put please verify and return by 10 a.m., but you could have included a date. And when I print this, what's really nice is it shows on the top of each page. So there is less excuse for you not getting it back when you specify. So I can come in and look at what grades are entered. I can see there's a blank here for Amos Rogers that I would need to fill in. I might not have had any comments here. But this very nicely gives me an area where I can see where I'm at. It's a year-long course, so I know I would need mid-year average, but maybe not the exam on something like health. But that gives me an area where I can look at so I can show what's going on. You can give these to the teachers. They can verify and give them back, make any grade changes that they need to if they have not made it in their grade books. So it gives you that capability to have it get going. If you are using a third-party gradebook, under Grades, Operations, you can transfer grades from either the MMS gradebook, this is the Visual FoxPro version, not the SQL version, and you can do it from third-party gradebooks also. So this gives you a way where you can come in, tell it which gradebook you want to bring it in from, tell it where their files are. It's looking for a GQE in this case because it's grade quick. It would look for a different extension depending on which machine or which version I'm coming from. I would be able to highlight which grades I want to bring in, and then you can add students to classes from the gradebook exchange files, which means that the teacher has the student in their gradebook, but you do not have them in that class. The default is for it to ask you which one it wants. And if there is existing grades, do you want to overwrite them or skip them? So if you had already marked the student withdrawn, you might want to skip that grade coming in because you don't want to change that. And then depending on the system that you're working with, you would come over to the setup and match up which ones you're bringing in. So that's just another way to bring them in. Once you do have the grades in, then you would come under Grades and print the Failure Missing Grades report. And we're really interested at this point on the missing grades. So I would be able to again pick my courses that meet during this marking period, build the list there, and on my report setup I can say I'm looking for missing grades in quarter 2, and I want to print them by the teacher, and I'd even like to do a new page for every teacher so I have something that I can put in their bins. So when I print, it's going to go through and look in quarter 2 and show me who has missing grades. I can also be in here looking for failure grades or a specific grade. So here for J. Armenian, I can see that in a couple of the classes there's only 1 or 2 kids that are missing their grades. But then I come into this next section, the 720 section 2, and I'm missing, about 8 kids. So this could be a situation where the teacher did some of them and then just missed doing this group. So you want them to go back and fill those in. So it was a nice quick way to say, I'm missing a bunch of students. I need to talk to that teacher to make sure they get them in. The failure report lets you print who is failing, and I might want to print that by student instead of by teacher. And what this does is any grade that is marked as a failing grade in your valid grade list, it's going to show you which students have those failing grades. And if the student is failing more than one course, it's going to show them one right after the other because I'm doing it by student and then course. So some of these students are just failing, some of them are failing a lot, If I come down in here, I'm going to see that Ariana is failing both British Lit and Physics, where the other students are just failing one course. So it's a quick way to get a look of what's going on. And if you're doing the web portal, then for the teacher portal, then anytime throughout the term, a guidance counselor can print this for just their own students to see who's failing, so they can maybe call them in and ask what sort of things are going on with the student. You can also do, under grades, more reports, a grades cross-reference report. Okay? So if I'm looking for students in a certain grade range, I can come in and look for that here. So if I'm just going to do it for my year-long courses this time, and in my grade sequence I can come in here and add, and I might be looking for some other situation that I want to see, or I want to look for a specific comment instead, because my failure list would let me find the failures but not look at the comments. But down in here in the grades cross-reference, I can actually look at the individual comments, and I would be able to pick up what comments I want to look for. So if you had a comment that had to do with the fact that you're looking for a teacher conference, then you can come in and actually go look for that and say, yeah, these are the ones I want to look for. So it just gives you that situation of going, yeah, that's what I want. So if I'm looking for the independent reading incompletes, and maybe I'm looking for just that one comment, and I want one or more occurrences of it. When I print, actually let me go over here first, I can set up, do I want an additional biographical field? So maybe I want their advisor, their guidance counselor. And now when I print, it's going to show me which students have that particular comment and what course it's in, which makes it nice to be able to look for that. Now the failure missing grades report only can look at one grade field, where the grades cross-reference I can look at multiple. So I could actually say, show me those students that are failing quarter 1 or quarter 2. These are the students with the advisor up here that says that they have that comment that I said to look for. I can change that if I want and say, instead of this, I want to find students that are failing quarter 1. So I want to go from a 0, let's do it this way, I want to go from a 59 to a 0 in quarter 1, and I want to look for quarter 2 that is also a 59 to a 0, and I can do an or between. I want to look for students that have a 0 to 59 in either quarter 1 or quarter 2, versus an and situation would be both. So I can go back and print, and I can save these settings so I don't have to do them each time, but it gives me that capability to go in and look and see what's going on. So it's just a different way to get the information in there. So here's a student with a 0 grade. Here's somebody who is failing both quarter 1 and quarter 2. This one's failing quarter 1, this one's failing quarter 2. So I get my mixed list. So that just is where that comes in. You should be running a data integrity periodically throughout the year, but especially just before some of the final grade entry for the marking period, and that's under admin, data integrity. Now the system administrator or someone with full administrator privileges would need to run this. And what we want to do is we want to synchronize the student grade records. And what that means is it's going to take the section that the student is in, look at the grade plan, and make sure that the student has all of the grades that are in the grade plan. So it goes through and checks that. You can also, with your control key, tell it to validate the grade and withdrawal flags, which means it's going to check to see is there a grade in that course, and if so, I'm going to make the status a G saying there are grades. If the course has been dropped or withdrawn, it's going to put a W in to say that they withdrew from the course. So it gives you that capability to make sure that the records are accurate. If there are no grade records there, especially for some of your final grade entries, such as the exam or the averages, then the system might give you an error, or the teacher would not be able to save the grade because the grade record isn't there to save the record into. Once the grades are in, and if it's, say, a semester time frame, then you might need to run grade averaging if the teachers are not already calculating it for you. And what that is under grades operations is there is a compute term and semester averages. And I can use that to get the semester or final averages. So I might recall a setting that comes in and say I want to do my mid-year average, in which case I want to take my 2 quarters, and I'm going to change my other totals, and I want my exam to be worth half as much as my quarter grades. And I'm going to come into the course selection and say I want my year-long courses. So both my APs, which have an extra AP grade, and my regular year-long classes, those are the ones I want. If I'm doing numeric grades and I find a letter grade, then I'm going to opt not to calculate the average for this student, because usually if I have a letter grade and it's a numeric course, a lot of times it's an incomplete, and I wouldn't want a semester average if I have an incomplete in one of my quarters or my exam. I have the option to overwrite an existing grade with a calculated grade. So if there already is a grade, I'm saying calculate it again. If I say no, I'm going to say whatever grade is there, I'm going to keep. If the teacher has locked the grade, then I have the option to be able to say I want to overwrite it or not. The default is if the teacher locked the grade, I want to keep it, but you can say no, I want to replace what's there. The numeric grades and these next two all have the same 3 options. So the next one is if I find an empty term or semester average, what do I want to do? So if I find an empty quarter grade in my calculations, do I want to not calculate the average? Do I want to count that empty grade as 0? Or do I want to ignore the empty grade field and its weight? And the reason there might be an empty grade is it could be a situation where the student came in a couple of days before quarter 2 started and doesn't have a quarter 1 grade. That would be an instance where I just want to, ignore it. I can do the same thing if I find an empty exam grade. And a lot of times if I'm calculating all of my courses, some might do exams, some might not. So this gives me the way to get around it. An exam grade is a grade bin, marking period grade bin that has the word exam in it. An average one is one that has the word average in it. So final average, semester 1 or semester 2 average, that sort of thing. And it lets you know right here that exam must be in the grade description. Case of the letters is not important. If I was doing letter grades, then I might want to say I want to do the average based on the point value of what course it is, and do I want to use the point value? I go ahead and come over here and say yes. Do I want to use the level that I chose in the catalog, or do I want to specify a level? And that's your choice, which way you want to work with it. The course and department settings give you the ability to say I have certain courses or certain departments that I do not want to calculate. I want to exclude them from the calculation, and I would just move them over. So if for some reason my study halls ended up with a grade plan, I could move those over and say don't calculate. Or if I know the course is a pass-fail course, I could go ahead and move those over. I can do special grades, or I can say certain grades that cause any average in there to be erased or not to be calculated. Now in the grade rules, in numeric grades, I already said if it's numeric, don't do that. Don't calculate it. But if I was doing letter grades, I might want to be able to come in and say, oh, if I have an I for incomplete, an M for medical, maybe an X for excused, I want the grade to be erased that's in the average. And I can do some of those same grades to say I don't want it calculated. So if it hadn't been calculated yet, I want to leave it so it's not getting calculated. And these don't have to be the same. The last of my special conditions is it lets me, if I'm doing numeric grades, say that between a certain grade level, some schools, if it's they might have a minimum failing grade. So it might be between 0 and 50, store a 50. Or if the teachers are putting in and the students are doing all their extra credit assignments, they might want to say anything between 100 and 120, I want it to be 100. Those are instances that I would come in with that. On my numeric grade, on my letter grades rather, I can say which way do I want to round. Do I want to have it less than the computed average? So an 82.4 is going to be an 82. An 82.8 would also be an 82. Do I want it more than the computed value? In which case the 82.4 would go up to an 83. Or do I want to have it go closest with the midpoint rounding up? In which case an 82.5 would be an 83. But an 82.49999 would be an 82. I can also specify which is the closest value to 0, in which case I can put an F. That's where this comes in. And you would run this once for the mid-year, coming up on semester 2, and you would do it different for final average. Because it might be for final average, I need to use my, if it's a semester course, I might be using my final exam and saying that is 0.5. Now, these could also have been, 40, 40, 20. That too is, it's just a ratio. So as long as my exam is worth half as much or however you want it to be, to calculate to come in there. Now this, because it's halfway through the year, I would have to make sure that I am only selecting my semester 1 classes when I do that computation. So which courses I pick is going to determine what sort of weighting I put in there. Now once all my grades are in, I can come in under grades, operations, and I can compute GPA. This is going to allow me to set up different GPAs depending on what I'm working with. I might want to compute a quarter 2 GPA. And where these categories come from is right here under more grade editing jobs and edit categories. So here, edit grades, and I can edit my categories and add more of them. You can have as many different categories to compute GPA into as you want. I can recall settings that I already have, so I can take my quarter 2 setting. It's going to put in my quarter 2 for me, tell me that it is a term grade, and when I come in here it has already selected the term that I'm working with. Now in this one I am weighting by course credit so that a half credit course only carries half the weight that a quarter course or a full credit course would carry. I can also use the levels that are in the catalog so that if I look at grades, more grade edits, and I look at a valid grade list, I can come in and see that, oh, if I'm doing numeric grades, my level 1 is worth more points than my level 0. And I might have more than one level, more than just the 2 levels. You can have up to 10. So my regular course might have less points than my honors course, but my AP could have more than my honors. And it's your choice how many points you're working with and what scale you're working with. You can also, if you want to have more than one level, I have my level 4 set up for a 4.0 GPA, where anything from 90 and above is a 4.0, anything 89 to 80 is a 3.0, so I'm not feathering it from one to the other, or I could with a different grade point value group if I so choose. But the level here corresponds to the level in the catalog. While we're here in the valid grade list, this is where I say whether it's a passing grade or a failing grade. So I can specify that, oh, oops, my 64 here is flagged as a failing grade when it really should be a passing grade. And that could be that only if the student got a 64 would they have failed the course, because they have to pass the course in order to earn credits. You can indicate here whether the course is included in GPA or not, and also what grade classification it is for honor roll. There are some that allow you to set the grade as no recalc from the grade book, and what that is if the teacher recomputes, you can come in and say, oh, if I have a withdrawal grade, I don't want the teacher to change that withdrawal grade with the calculation of the next assignment. So you can come in and say no recalc. So all of those are factors that are going to impact your GPA or your honor roll. I can go ahead and save the changes. Now if I come in here, as I said, I can use the same level as what's in the catalog, or I can specify what level I want. If I go ahead and choose just one student to recompute, and your student range, I just did the one student. You can have the information down here on how to search or select your students. If I wanted to do just a certain grade level, I could sort by year of grad. Click in here, say find my next 2015. I can opt that I want to control and click and select from here down if I'm looking for my juniors. Come back into the year of grad, type in the next one, hold my control key, click again, and now I have just the juniors that I want to compute. It's entirely up to you how you want to do that. So I'm going to click OK and process. Actually, I'm going to go back to just the one student. I'm going to deselect everyone and just click Amy. Yeah, we'll pick on Christine this time. And when I process, I'm looking for the individual quarter class. If there is a transfer course with a quarter grade this year, I'm going to look at that. When it's done, I can view, print the log, so I can see how it did its calculation. So I have the credit value of 0.25. She earned an 81 and she got a 20.25 points. So it's going to do that for each of the courses that are in here. Now my CCC course happens to be a 0, but it also tells me the course is not included in GPA. And I happen to know that my CCC course happens to be a lunch. So it lets me see what it's doing for each of the courses. And I can use that view to say, oh, my credit value's off, my points are off. It lets me see what's going on to point me in the right direction. I had ones where I did a GPA for a student. Actually, let's see about running that. So maybe I now want to do my career GPA so I can have that show. So I want to do a career, and I want to do my final average or quarters 1 and 2. What that does is when I do a career GPA, I'm going to say compute the 4 years that I have in my system. Now, if I am a middle high school, where I have more than just the high school students there, I might need to limit which years I'm computing based on the year of grad of the student. So if I'm doing a senior, I might want to do 4, maybe 5 years, depending on the student. If I'm doing a junior, I don't want their 2010-2011 year because that would have been their 8th grade year. I only want the other 3 grades, the other 3 years, because this is junior, sophomore, freshman. So when I have a mixed high school and middle school or junior high, I need to pay attention to the years that I'm calculating. The left side says I'm going to calculate all of these. So I'm going to ignore the GPA that was already existing. I'm going to do a new calculation. The right side says I'm going to summarize and use a pre-existing value of grade points and credits attempted. So I'm going to click OK. Let me go back and pick the junior and process. Actually, I forgot one thing here, and that is which grade point value group to use. So I'm going to use the major one, but I can choose any one I want. And I'm allowing substitution when the empty grade field is found. And what that lets me do is if my final average is empty, I'm going to use the quarter grades. And my other calculation might have used quarter 3, quarter 4. Now I don't want to use quarter 3 right now, because quarter 3, if I'm doing it at the end of quarter 2, might be in process, and I might have teachers that have started to enter grades into quarter 3. So I don't want that in there just yet, because that's an in process. That's why I can do it. And I can do multiples if I wanted to. So it just gives me options. So I'm going to go ahead and process. Now this view print that I showed a little earlier, I can change the output. So maybe I want to go to Excel or a PDF. That I can also do if I need to. And I'm just going to go back and do the view. So now I'm going back to the 10-11 school year. I can see my transfer courses. I might have a course that's not included in GPA. I might have seen that, oh, I have a credit value that's 0, and why was that? So somewhere in the transfers I might need to adjust my credit value, but this lets me see what's going on for the multiple years. And in the current year it would show me that, oh, I didn't have a final average, so let me use quarter 1, quarter 2. And here I have a final average for this course, so it lets me see what it's working with. The credit percentages that it's using are coming from the grade weighting and plan. So under grades, more grade edits is my edit grade schemes. And in here I can say which grade fields do I have. I can come into my grade assignment weighting plans, and I can look at a year-long plan and say, oh, a quarter 1 grade in a year-long is 25% of the credit. Where a quarter 1 or quarter 2 in a semester plan is 50% of the credit. And if I'm in an individual quarter course, it's 100% of the credit. So this is where I get my credit percentages. Your school might do this differently. You might have 100% of the credit for each term. And that's entirely up to you. You might want to bring in different credits for the exams. It's entirely what you want to work with. The include in GPA is the ones that you're doing by default as if you were doing it at the end of the year. And you come into substitution is when this grade field is empty, or whichever ones you're working with. And you can select quarter grades only instead of using the final. But we get into more of that when you're doing the full GPA webinar. So once your GPAs exist, you can come under Grades, Operations, and compute your class rank if you'd like to see that on the report cards. And you would just come in, specify the GPA that you want to work with. You can compute for an individual year of grad, or you can say compute them all. And that way it'll do one click here, and it will calculate each of the different year of grads in your school, and then you tell it that it's finished. Where this one you would have to select the year of grad, process, tell it you're done, select the next year of grad, process, and tell it you're done. You can also come in under Grades, More Grade Edits, and set up your honor roll rules. Your honor roll rules are usually set once for the year, and or you could have different rules for whether it is high school or junior high or middle school. Once the rules exist, you come under grades, operations, and you compute your honor roll. In here, I might not want to show my sports ineligibility on my report card, so I can just use my control key and deselect it. So I only want high honors and honor roll. I can come in and say it's quarter 2, I want to store it in quarter 2, and I'm going to process. And that will go through and calculate what's going on. So if I do just my A's, I'm going to process. And it did 18 students, calculated the honor roll, and I'm going to view the log to see what did it do. So here's the ID number of the student, and I can come in and see whether they made level 1, level 2, and go to the next student, and it will show me what's going on. So it shows the GPA as it's been computed, and then what else is out here. So that just lets me verify what my calculations were. If I come into the student grade editor, I can actually see what GPA they made, and or if they did not make GPA, make honor roll rather, sorry, not GPA. So if I want to look at the credits, which I don't think I've computed yet, we got to go back and do credits. I could see what credits they've earned or what my year-to-date is. I can look at the GPA and rank. So I can see here's my quarter 2 GPA, here's my career GPA, any rank that I've computed. I can look at the honor roll and see whether they've made honor roll or not. And if they're not included in honor roll or they're at a high honors instead of high honors, I can click over on the reason and find out why they weren't included. In this case, they didn't have enough credit load for the honor roll that we're computing. And I can go to the next student, and she has enough, so she made honors first time, but not the second time. So if I look here, she didn't make honors because she wasn't within the GPA for high honors. And if I look at the current quarter 2, she didn't make GPA in either case because her GPA was not 90 and above for the 2 levels that I was computing. So it lets me see what's going on with that. My attendance totals is I calculate those under daily operations, and I want to transfer my attendance summary totals. What this does is it takes the time frame that I want to work with, and it's going to let me see, I want to do it into quarter 2, so I can come in and say, oh, let's do it on November 4th, and I'm going to run through January 17th. And when I process, it's going to calculate how many absences, tardies, and dismissals, and how many unexcused absences the student has in that time frame. It's going to pay attention to the calendars that are used. So if a student changed calendars in the middle of that time frame, say they went from regular ed to special ed or into career tech or something like that, it will take those into account. And then when it comes over here, it would show me how many totals. So I'd be able to see how many absences, how many unexcused absences, tardies, dismissals for the date range that I want to work with. And if I continue to the right, it will also show me how many days possible in that time frame, how many days present, what was the percent attendance, non-members, and how many sessions were involved. Now if I'm in New Hampshire, my sessions are going to be twice as high because New Hampshire counts attendance in half days. And that's something I need to take into account. To get my credits, I'm going to go in under grades, operations, and I'm going to compute course credits. I I can again recall settings if I have them. So if I want to do a year-to-date, I can do so. And I would just select which school years I want to work with. So if I was doing Christine, I would want, who's a senior, I'd want to do all 4 years. If I was doing Amy, her sister, I might only want to do 3 years. So it lets me pick on that. And again, I can do the actual calculation, or I can use a summary record. So I might opt, I want to compute this year, and I want to use last year's career. Or I might want to use last year's year-to-date and the year-to-date from the year before that. That's very doable. And then when I click OK, if I click just on Amy, when I process, I'm not going to substitute as I did with the GPA, because if I don't find a final average, I don't want to compute the credits because they haven't finished the course. When I view, I can see it's only calculating the current year. There's the credits for this year. And then there's the summary record for the 11-12 school year and from the 12-13. So it's just going to add those two numbers I already had to this number and give me a total. So that makes it easy for me to see what's going on. So those are all most of the pieces I'm using for my report cards. Under grades, more grade edits, I can edit the report card comments, where I can set up which comments I want them to use. It is a 3-character field. They can have as many different comments as they want. If you just stay numeric, that gives you 999 different comments. Also in that area, under grades, more grade edits, is I can edit the report card message. This is a message that usually prints in the lower right-hand corner of your report card. I have only one of them set up at the moment, but I can have different ones for different marking periods and or different groups of students. This existing one is a legend that lets me see what they have for the different grades of what is the letter grade equaling the number grades. So it just gives them an idea of where they are, which can be handy if they're not straight numerics, not straight 10-digit ranges. Some schools, a B goes from an 84 to a 92. So it depends on the school as to where those levels are. You might have, excuse me while it makes rude on me. If I go back into the report card messages, you might have more than one message if you were doing a different message to the seniors at the end of the year, those that are graduating, versus those that are continuing and coming back to you next year. So you can have different numbers, different messages depending on what you need. And it's just a yellow plus to add. Once all of that is set up, then you go to set up your report cards. And that's going to be under Grades, Print Report Cards. Now it's initializing the form, so it's going to look at all the information you have. It's going to now knows the list of your comments to how to interpret it, to take that number that's stored in the student record and give you text if that's what you're looking for. All those other things that it's looking for. So I'm going to recall a setting, say my Quarter 2 report card. And I'm going to leave it as a plain paper report card that lets me print it on a laser printer or inkjet. And it's going to be in landscape mode, just to let you know that that's the way it looks. There are pre-printed forms that you can use if you so choose, but you would need a dot matrix type printer, tractor feed. You can say if you're going to use the alternate grade, say I want to store numerics, but I want to print letters, then I can say I want to use the alternate grade, in which case it wants to know which grade point value group to use to know which grades to show you. So do I want just an A, B, C, D? Do I want A plus A, A minus? what would I like to see? Do I want to include transfer courses on my report card? Do I want to include my withdrawn courses? So I can see they were in here, they've left, they're now in this other course. It all depends on what you want to work with. If you have the situation where your teachers change from one marking period to another, then you want to select the week to use for that teacher data. So I'm using week 19 because that includes quarter 3. I want to include quarter 2. Do I want to suppress report cards for students with no grades or comments in the selected fields? So if I have a student that is coming to us at the beginning of quarter 3, do I want to print a quarter 2 report card for them? This allows me to say, don't print it. If I was trying to do a pre-printed form, I could say how many samples do I want to use to make sure I'm lined up before I do my actual run. Do I want to include a graphic on my report card? If so, I can go find where it is. We do recommend, if you are going to use a graphic, that you put it on the server where the software is, because then it doesn't matter who logs in, they would have access to that graphic. I don't want to be if I put it from my local computer, then if someone else logs in, they might not be able to have access to my computer. So if I put it on the server, everyone has access to that graphic. If I go to my header, you can see what the graphic looks like. We do try to keep the graphic, say, under 200 meg, preferably 200K. This is about as big as you're going to print it, so it's not like I'm trying to print it on a poster. So try to keep it on the smaller size. If it's too big, it will tell you that it can't work with it. Okay. So up here we have the place for the ID number of the student, and right here is where we say whether we want to see that ID or not. You're going to get the student name. The option is, do you want to see the parent name and address? Now you can see the parent name or the address. You can see them both. You can see just one of them. If I don't want to show the parent name, I can turn that off or put them back in. Now right now my address is coming from contact 1. I can use any contact I want or the mailing flag. What the mailing flag is when I'm in the student biographical editor and I'm in the contacts tab, you can say whether you want this contact to receive mail or not. So I might have the father does not, the mother does, and if I look at the next contact, I might have the grandfather is also getting mail. So I might have a situation where I have a custodial and non-custodial parent, both who want to receive report cards. So if both of them say yes to mail, then when I'm in here and I use the mailing flag, it's going to print one report card right after the other. So I don't have to do a separate run in order to do that. You can bring in 3 pieces of text that might or might not have associated biographical fields. So in this case, I'm showing who's in the advisor field, and it might say advisor, it might say counselor. I can just have some text of what hours were there. We can use with the expected year of grad or grade level. You can opt you want to print the date on the report card, and you can opt you want to print the time on the report card. Your initial run, you might not need the time, but if you're reprinting a student's report card, you might say, oh, I want to put the time on there so I know which report card is which and which is the more accurate. Your grade fields is where you specify which fields you want coming across the report card. You have places for 12 different grades so that you can have, if I'm running a 4-quarter system, I could have 4 quarters, 2 mid-year exam, mid-year average, final exam, semester 2 average, final average, any of that sort of information. And I can mix and match if I want to show progress grades or trimester grades or whatever it is that I want on there. That just depends on what you want. You can also bring in the comments if you want. Now here there's an indication of I would print the code rather than the text. And one thing I didn't show when we were setting up attendance totals is I can come into class attendance, go to operations, and I can transfer my class attendance into grade reporting. So I can actually come in and say, oh, for that date range that I wanted, I can come in and say, I want to go quarter 2, comment 4, and I want to go from November 4th to January 17th, and this time I use the little calendar, and I want to count how many absences the student had. So I want to count the class absences and transfer them into the quarter 2 comment 4. And I can say go ahead and transfer. And I didn't find anybody who had attendance in that time frame, which probably would never happen to you if you're in actually tracking class attendance. And I can say, oh, I'd like to show the quarter 2 absences along with the other. So now when I print, it'll show me how many times they've been absent, and I changed the label in my database config. And I can say I want to see 2 of my quarter 2 comments. If I would also like to see 2 of the quarter 1 comments, I can bring those in also. But I might need to know in my note or something that I'm showing which comments are what, because they're all going to be sort of lumped together. The credit, honor, class rank, and honor roll options, let me see which ones do I want to show. So right now I'm showing only my career credits as a total. I'm showing my career rank, and I'm doing quarter 2 honor roll. And you can pick how many of these or how few by leaving them none selected. On the attendance, you can say which attendance totals that you'd like to see. You can also say calculate the totals based on the numbers I'm seeing here. You have 4 lines for your attendance totals that are unexcused, excused, total absences, tardies, and dismissals. I can't print all 5. I can only print 4 out of the 5. And if I don't want to split out excused with unexcused, I can say don't select it. And if I'm in New Hampshire, I might have to say half days instead of whole days, because their counts are in half days. This is where I would pick which report card message I'd like to see. And if I go over to my GPAs, I have a GPA that will print at the bottom of the report card, and I have GPAs that will print, this is the bottom left, and I have GPAs that'll print on the bottom right above the message. So if I want all my sort of career stuff in the same place, I might say I want quarter 2 here and my career up here. And I can just come in and change my labels as to which ones I want where. So it just gives, whatever it is that I want to work with. Now, you'll notice there's no space in the career GPA if I'm using the colon, because when I click up there, my cursor goes between the A and the colon, and that means I'm at the last character to the right of the cursor. So this is how we set it up, and I'm just going to pick the one student, and I'm going to go ahead and print. So this is going to show me for the first contact for Amy. Here are her letter grades. Here are the notes. Now in this case for conceptual physics, she shows initiative, she has cooperative attentive, comes prepared, exhibits good work habits. Now, I don't know, looking at this, if they all apply to my most current marking period or what. So that's why sometimes they don't show the comments from the prior. And it also lets me see if there were any absences. Now, the nice thing with bringing in the class absences is I can try and figure out why my total absence is different than my class absences. Because I might have had a situation where the student was absent from Spanish 6 times, but they've only been absent from school 4 times. As I scroll down, I can see my rank, my career GPA, the career credits, and then my quarter GPA over here. That's why I swapped them, because I wanted, these are sort of my career items here, and I can put my quarters over here. So it just depends on what you want to see. We're looking at Rhonda, who's the mother. If I go right to the next page, I now get Charles, who could have been the non-custodial parent, or in this case it happens to be the grandfather. So it lets me see the information that I want, and it changes the address as needed. One of my other options I can do here is under my output option, I can send it to PDF, I can put it to an Excel file, and if my user account is set up for email, I can also send the report to email. And if I go to my email options, the default is I'm only going to do students and contacts eligible for email. So if in the contact area they have an email address and it says yes to send email, then I'm going to email this report card to the parent rather than printing a paper copy. Now the top 2 items are in either or. I can also do all selected students, email where I can, paper otherwise. And I can also print a paper copy as well for my email recipients. The from email address is what's in the user account. So I can come in here and say it's the quarter 2 report card. So I can come in, put whatever sort of message I want in here with who to contact and so on. At the bottom, you have an area where you can track the email. And what this does is ET is for email tracking. It's going to just do a randomly generated number. And then you can specify the path of where that goes. And basically it lets you know whether it emailed it or printed it. So it makes it nice. It will not track whether it was delivered and when it was opened. This is just to let you know what you did. Okay? So you do have that option, but your user account has to be set up for email in order for that to happen. And that's basically how you set up your emails, your report cards rather. Do you have any questions? One of the things I forgot to show was how to get the label for the report card for those attendance totals that I worked with under my grade fields. How did I get this ABS? And how I got that, and I usually don't be in the report card when I do this, but I go under Admin to Database Configuration. In here, you can go to your Grading tab, and you can label your report cards, which comments they are. So that's where I put my ABS. Now, if I would also like to see a tardy total, I can put TAR in there, or whatever I want. And that's going to be how many times they're tardy from class, or actually to class, rather than how many times they were absent. So that's where I can go in and label them. This is also where I can label my grade point value groups. So I could have a separate grade point value group if I was doing, say, a 4.0 scale GPA versus a 100 base GPA. And I could have different ones depending on what I needed. But this is where it's going to find that information. So again, I would be able to come in under Class, Operations, and Transfer transfer my class totals into grade reporting. So I would be able to go in, specify I want to put it in the appropriate quarter. So if I was doing quarter 2, comment 3 is my tardies, I can specify the date range I want to work with. And I would transfer and it would just go through. Now you can also count how many once per class versus once per class period. So if I had a double period class, do I want to count it twice or only once? So it lets me pull that information in. And if I was doing both, I would then go to comment 4 and do my absences and transfer. But that's how I would get that in there. Okay. I came into the student grade editor, and I'm going to go under the grades tab, because when I'm in the grades tab and I go up to the printer button, I can actually print a report card from the grades editor, and I don't have to go back and find the student. It knows which student I'm sitting on, and the student range is actually grayed out. So I can again recall my setting that I want to use. And I had a question on how many grade fields or columns do I have for each of the courses. So I have 12 different grade fields that I can use before I get to my credits. Now, how many of these, like if I don't have anyone who's putting in mid-year exams, then I have the option to not put that field in. Or if I wanted to be able to see final averages, because I might have some semester courses. That just depends on which ones I want to work with here and whether I want to see the actual subject credits. So I can just add in the fields that I want and print again and save the settings so I can show that I have the correct comments and that I have the correct other information as I go across. So it gives me that capability. And on something like my masonry, I might have only gotten a final average from the career tech. I might not have gotten the individual grades as I came through. So it gives you that capability to put up to it. Now, I had a question on could I put attendance totals on my semester averages, and the answer is yes, as long as in the valid, in the grade schemes that you turn one of the comments on for that. Because by default for exams and averages we don't normally store comments, but you can turn it on for that. So it just depends on what you're looking for. Now, because I was in the student grade editor, it allowed me to bring that up. Just as a quick back here, if I'm in the schedule tab, I would print a schedule. If I was in the history tab, when I go up to the printer button, I would print a transcript. If I was in the other areas, I would print a student record listing. You can bring in, some people like the sort of the report card view. If I wanted to bring in my different areas here, like I want to show the semester. Let's take the final out, and then I can look at my quarter grade, sort of just to get an overview of how the student is doing. And what this allows me to do is I can shuffle the years. I might not need next year yet, but if I do a view, this allows me to see the actual information where I can look at it all at once. And I brought in the mid-year average attendance rather than the mid-year average grade. So I can close out of here, come back into my mid-year average, put the grade in instead of the attendance. I usually like to start with the current year up top, and I can shorten this up if my codes aren't as much so I can more easily see the credits. But I can also scroll down and see the other years, so it gives me a nice quick view of how is it working. And it will include any transfer courses the student might have. Okay, so it does give me that capability to bring those in. So just as a quick thing here. And any of these, as I'm working with it, remember that you can go up to the question mark for context-sensitive help. Now it's going to know that I'm in the grade editor and I'm on the grades tab. So it knows exactly where I am in the system. And it tells me about I have links to the grade verification lists. I have where to go to the grade history. It will give me step-by-step on how to do that. I can also go to print report cards, and it's going to give me the different areas for printing those report cards. You know, what information, email overview, and I can click on that to get what do I need for the email overview to be able to email report cards. Paper choices, prerequisites for my report cards. I need to enter grades by class or transfer them in. I need to calculate the credits. I need to calculate GPA or rank and or my attendance. The only two that have to be done in a certain order is ranking always has to be calculated after after GPA, because it's going to calculate the rank based on what their GPA is. Okay, so this is sort of a nice quick summary of where we went, and it shows us exactly where we want to go to get that information. Even for class attendance, it's going to tell me where to go to do that. So it's really nice, quick, this is what I need. So do remember that that is available. These webinars are recorded and available in our video learning library if you have a webinar subscription. As a reminder, in the staff portal, you can come into your gradebook and you can create a school or district announcement that can remind the teachers that grades are due. And you can opt to go only to the teachers. And you can just say that and just put in a message. Let me see. If it stopped there, then I might want to go here. So you can actually have this go out on an individual school basis or as a district basis, depending on what you need. And you can create that announcement, and that means that when the parents, excuse me, I didn't put in a date, when the teachers come in, you can remind them that this is due, and every time they log in, they're going to see that announcement until you change the ending date. Okay? So it just gives you that option. You can do a different note to the parents and students saying that report cards are now available online for quarter 2. So it does give you options that you can put in announcements as needed for the gradebook to remind teachers that things are due. Also doable for progress reports if you want to get those grades in for from the teachers that as of this date we're going to be copying for progress reports. So just remember that is out there also. We thank you for your participation. As I said, there's help here. There is help in the generations. There are recordings of the webinars. All of these are ways to get more information for what you're doing. We thank you for your participation and hope to have you at another webinar. Thank you.